Hey everyone, and welcome. Whether you're sitting at a desk, working on a factory floor, or even just at your kitchen table, you're in a workplace. And that means workplace safety is something that affects every single one of us every single day. So, let's dive right in.
It's a heavy question, right? We usually think of danger as, some big dramatic event. But for a lot of people, the biggest risks they face are just part of their 9 to 5. In this explainer, we're going to break down what those risks actually are, and more importantly, what you can do about them.
Okay, so let's get on the same page with the key word, hazard. A hazard is just anything that has the potential to cause harm. Now, that sounds super simple, but the real power of that definition is just how broad it is. And that's really the key thing to remember. Right, because when you think of dangers at work, your mind probably jumps to big, obvious accidents. A slip and fall, maybe a machine malfunction. But honestly, the reality is a whole lot sneakier. Let's talk about the hidden dangers that often fly under the radar. And this is so important to get. A hazard isn't always a puddle on the floor or a sparking wire. It can be the constant strain on your wrists from typing all day. It could be the way your chair is designed, or even the psychological stress of impossible deadlines. These kinds of dangers are everywhere, no matter what your job title is. So, to really get a handle on this, safety experts have broken down hazards into 5 main categories. I like to think of them as the 5 different faces of risk you might see at work. Understanding these is really the first step to being able to deal with them. This framework makes it all so much clearer. First up, you've got physical hazards. That's the obvious stuff like loud noises, extreme heat or cold, or unguarded machinery. Then there are chemical hazards, which could be anything from harsh industrial acids to the basic cleaning supplies you use. Biological covers things you might not think about, like mold, bacteria, or viruses. Ergonomic, that's all about the long-term strain from a poorly designed workspace that just doesn't fit your body. And finally, psychosocial hazards. These are the really invisible ones, like burnout, intense stress, or harassment. It just goes to show you, safety is about so much more than just avoiding accidents, isn't it? All right. So, we've looked at the different faces of the problem. But what's the solution? Well, thankfully, there's a whole system in place designed to protect people, and it all centers around one big name. And that name is OSHA. In the US, OSHA is basically the official rulebook for safety on the job. The entire reason this organization exists is to make sure every employer provides a work environment that isn't going to injure you or make you sick. Simple as that. This quote right here just nails their mission. And the most important word in that whole sentence is preventing. See, OSHA isn't just about showing up after something bad has already happened. The whole point is to set up clear, solid standards to stop injuries and illnesses from happening in the first place. So how does OSHA actually make this happen? It's not just some giant book of rules collecting dust on a shelf. You should think of it more like a toolkit, filled with very specific tools and requirements that employers absolutely have to use to keep you safe. Okay, one of the most classic tools in that kit is personal protective equipment. You've probably heard it called PPE. We're talking about helmets, safety glasses, gloves, respirators, all that gear that acts as your last line of defense. And here's the deal. If your job requires it, your employer is legally required to give it to you and teach you how to use it. It's totally non-negotiable. Another huge one for OSHA is fall prevention. Falls are consistently one of the top causes of serious injuries and deaths at work, especially in fields like construction. That's why OSHA is so strict about things like guardrails, safety harnesses, and netting. These aren't just nice-to-haves, they are required safeguards. And listen, this isn't just for people on construction sites. If you have a desk job, OSHA's got your back too. That's where ergonomics comes in, which is really just the science of making the job fit the person, not the other way around. Your employer has a responsibility to set you up with a workstation and tools that won't cause things like chronic back pain or carpal tunnel down the road. Another tool in your kit is learning to speak the language of safety. The words used in warning signs or safety manuals aren't random. They're actually a code that tells you the level of risk. As you can see here, if a warning says something will happen, that's a high probability danger. If it says it might happen, the risk is lower, but you still got to pay attention. Learning to read this code is a subtle but really powerful way to stay safe. And all of this brings us to the most critical part of the entire safety equation, you. Because this whole system, all these rules and toolkits, they only work if you know your role and feel empowered. And knowing your rights, well, that's your single most powerful tool. So here's the bottom line. Under the law, you have these core fundamental rights. First, you have the right to a safe workplace.
period. Second, you have the right to get all the information and training you need about any hazards you might face. And maybe most important of all, you have the right to speak up and report an unsafe condition without any fear of getting in trouble or losing your job.
So, as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with a challenge. Thinking about everything we just talked about, what's one hazard in your own workplace that you're going to look for tomorrow with a fresh set of eyes? It could be anything, big or small. Because just being aware, that's the first and honestly the most important step to keeping yourself safe.